Well, good afternoon to you. It's 4:06 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, we'll be joined by Fairfax County Supervisor Pat Harity. He's also a candidate for lieutenant governor in Virginia. He's got some ideas on how to bring an out-of-control Commonwealth's attorney under control in Fairfax. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630 WMAL. So we've seen the border numbers plummet big time under President Trump, which is good. We see all sorts of deportations going on, which is what President Trump ran on doing, which is also good. But my next guest says, in fact, we could go even faster if we wanted. Ronald Mortensen is now here. He's a former Assistant Secretary of State for the Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration, and he's a Center for Immigration Studies fellow. Sir, good to have you with us.
Glad to be with you.
Hey, just on your title, former Assistant Secretary of State for the Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration, tell me about that bureau. What does that bureau do for the State Department?
Well, first of all, I was nominated to fill that position, and I was never confirmed for the Senate by the Senate, even though the president sent it over 3 times. PRM, it sets United States government foreign policy on migration, but it also provides lots of humanitarian assistance, primarily through the United Nations UNHCR. And so it has a humanitarian element to it, and it has a policy element to it.
You know, I looked at their website. I looked at their website to kind of assess like how they describe their own mission. And under Biden, the Population, Refugees, and Migration Bureau said it, quote, promotes U.S. interests by providing protection, easing suffering, and resolving the plight of persecuted and forcibly displaced people around the world. And now the Trump version of that website says PRM promotes U.S. interests by working to reduce illegal migration, to provide humanitarian assistance to those fleeing persecution, yada, yada, yada. So they focus first and foremost on we have to stop illegal migration to the country. So is that a new mission for this organization, or is that like a uniquely Trump mission, or is that what it's supposed to be doing in general?
Well, I think that's what it should have been doing in general. It fluctuates back and forth between administrations and following the policy. And, of course, during the Biden administration, encouraging migration all over the world was a key thing.
Yeah, it sure was. Okay, so you write today for the Center for Immigration Studies, this past week, in fact, how we could actually expedite deportations using the power of DOGE, which Elon Musk and the crew are running right now. How can we do that? What would it take?
Well, it would take a combination of DOGE helping SSA to do what they're supposed to be doing, quite frankly. Because what happens when somebody enters the United States illegally, the first thing they do, one of the very first things they do is they buy a packet of fraudulent documents. And that always includes a social security number so they can get a job. It includes probably a driver's license, and it includes something like a green card or some kind of immigration card that gives them status in the United States. So they immediately get these false documents. And that's forgery, which is a felony, by the way. And then when they use those documents, they take them into an employer who fills out an I-9 form. Now, if they work off the books, they don't need that, of course. But if they take them into an employer who fills out the I-9 form, the employer takes those documents, the employee or the illegal immigrant presenting them signs the I-9 form saying under penalty of perjury, everything on this is true. So that's another felony they've committed. And then if that social security number that they happen to be using belongs to an American citizen, that's another felony of identity theft in most states. Under the federal law, they can get away with it by saying that they didn't know it belonged to somebody. But in Utah, where I am, that doesn't work because it says whether you can't argue you didn't know it belonged to somebody if you're using it. That's identity theft.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens they can do is if Social Security they know multiple people are using the same Social Security number, but they don't do anything about it usually. So one thing DOGE can do, if they go in and they pull all of the numbers that have multiple people using them. Now, and DOGE doesn't need to take the information out. They don't need to even know who the number belongs to necessarily. But if they can identify where there's multiple people using a number, Social Security can identify who that was originally issued to, and they can also identify then who's fraudulently using that. Now, if they would take that and take that information and send it to the Department of Justice, to state attorney generals, and to the Department of Homeland Security, then people could start going after the perpetrators of these crimes and protecting American citizens rather than doing what Social Security does now, is protect the criminals and at the expense of the American citizen.
So Ronald Mortensen, you think that it'd be really obvious if we were to get under the hood of the Social Security Administration, if DOGE gets under the hood, they can see that multiple people are using the same Social Security number pretty easily, you think?
Yeah, if you pull out the numbers and there's number X has 4 different people's names associated with it, you can quickly see something going on.
Right.
In fact, even in Utah, what we did was we had our Department of Workforce Services ran the Social Security numbers of kids on public assistance against the wage base, and we found out 222 kids between 0 and 12 had their Social Security numbers being used by employment purposes. And
yes.
then when they ran all of the Social Security numbers in the wage database, just ran the numbers, and they found out that 8,000 numbers had 3 or more people using them.
Yeah, it's funny. I sometimes to the extent the left talks about this at all, sometimes I hear them say things like, "Well, the people who steal Social Security numbers, they don't get to take Social Security checks, so they're actually helping make Social Security solvent. They're paying into Social Security. So why are you complaining? This fraud is helpful to the American people, Ronald."
Well, in a case that is true, because if the number doesn't match, the money that Social Security gets, they put into a suspense account, and it sits there, and there's over $1 billion in that account, actually. So it does help in that case. The problem is if that Social Security number belongs to you,
yes,
or to your child, everything the illegal immigrant does on that number is getting attached to it. So if they have bad credit, that goes against you. And worse is that when they use the children's numbers, nobody's checking their credit. At least you have a chance to fight back. But so the child has bad credit. If they get arrested, they have an arrest record. And if they might go get medical services, you can corrupt the medical records. When they go in for means-tested benefits like Medicaid, if somebody's earning income on their number, that they might be earning too much money to even get Medicaid, even though they're 5 years old.
Smart.
So they always look at it doesn't hurt, but it does hurt because this is a crime with very real victims.
Yes, so you have to own the behavior of every person who's stolen your identity going forward. So if you're subjected to a background check at some point in your career, you're going to have a lot of trouble explaining why it is that you've got this huge history that you weren't even aware of.
Absolutely. There's one story of a young woman. She went through law school, passed the bar, and when they did the background check on her, they denied her law license in the state because she had criminal records.
Wow.
So and that's what people will not look at. They will not look at the victims on the other end of this. So Social Security and DOGE working together,
yes,
they can identify the numbers that are being used, and ideally Social Security, they would then, like I say, turn it over. They would also identify the employers, so they now know who's paying wages these Social Security numbers, and they could tie in with IRS and look at that. And so there's a series of things that flow down from this. They could also notify every American citizen who has more than one person using their number that they're a victim of identity theft, and give them the documents they can at least file a case on that and get it on the record. So there's lots of things they can do.
Yeah. No, well, this also seems like a situation that is specifically built for Elon Musk's skill set, which is to take big tranches of data, to use an algorithm to sort through them, to dedupe them, to figure out how many people are using duplicate versions of the same exact Social Security number, and then to drill down and quickly and efficiently figure out, okay, who's stealing this identity and what employer might be breaking the law by hiring someone who's illegal here. Elon Musk and his team of computer nerds really are built to kind of tackle a problem like this, aren't they?
They definitely are. And working together, Social Security's got to have a record who that number is issued to. So once you have the multiple people, they can quickly see who the owner is and who the perpetrators are, and work from there. And like I say, farm that information out to DOJ, farm it out to DHS, and farm it out to state attorney generals.
Yeah, amazing. Well, fantastic idea. Not surprised coming from the Center for Immigration Studies. Ronald Mortensen, really appreciate your time today and telling us that it is possible for DOGE not only to cut lots of spending, but also to help accelerate these deportations. Really exciting, and you can read more about this week. Ronald Mortensen writing for the Center for Immigration Studies, how Social Security and DOGE can help expedite that is deportations. Ronald, thank you. All right, President Trump is, as we speak, taking questions from Maralago, the Winter White House. Here he is. We'll dip in.
Upset about not having a seat. Well, they've had a seat for 3 years and a long time before that. This could have been settled very easily. Just a half-baked negotiator could have settled this years ago without the loss of much land, very little land.
He's talking about Ukraine and Russia.
Without the loss of any lives, and without the loss of cities that are just laying on their sides. You have those magnificent golden domes that are shattered, will never be replaced. You can't replace them. 1,000-year-old domes that are so beautiful, you can't replace that. A whole civilization has changed because of what. So when they're worried about not being seated, you mean somebody that should have gone in and made a deal a long time ago. You could have made a deal. This is one that could have made a deal. There was no talk of this during the Trump administration. Putin would have never, ever done it. And by the way, we wouldn't have had October 7th. You know that. We wouldn't have had October 7th either in Israel. And we wouldn't have had that mess that's going on over there. It's like we have great fire people here. We're putting out fires. All over the world, we're putting out fires. So that wouldn't have happened. And you know what else wouldn't have happened? Inflation. Because it was caused really by the cost of energy going through the roof because of their bad energy policies and also their spending, their terrible spending, wasteful spending on the Green New Scam. It's a scam. It's a whole big scam. Yeah, please.
Yes, sir. I want to ask you a little closer to home. What would it take for you to reconsider the restrictions on the Associated Press? And secondly, some of your advisors are concerned with the Associated Press's style guide, using language and giving guidance to not use words like illegal immigrant or to use phrases like gender-affirming care. And they're concerned about that being an encroaching amount of liberalism in the way in which the press writes about things. Do you share those concerns?
Well, I do think that some of the phrases that they want to use are ridiculous. And I think, frankly, they become obsolete, especially in the last 3 weeks, because many things have happened in the last 3 weeks. And I didn't know about that, but I would say that if they want to use certain phrases like that, and I guess some are okay, but many aren't. But the Associated Press just refuses to go with what the law is and what is taking place. It's called the Gulf of America now. It's not called the Gulf of Mexico any longer. I have the right to do it, just like we have the right to do Mount McKinley, and nobody's even challenging that. But only the essentially, it's primarily the Associated Press. And I don't know what they're doing, but I just say that we're going to keep them out until such time as they agree that it's...
Look, they have the right to publish anything they want to, the Associated Press, and he has the right to invite whoever he wants to into the Oval Office. That's actually what's going on here.
Gulf of America. We're very proud of this country, and we want it to be the Gulf of America. Now, the Associated Press, as you know, has been very, very wrong on the election, on Trump and the treatment of Trump and other things having to do with Trump and Republicans and conservatives. And they're doing us no favors, and I guess I'm not doing them any favors. That's the way life works. But, you know, thank you for the question. Who are you with? Very good question. Thank you. Yes.
We're hearing that Russia wants to force Ukraine to hold new elections in order to sign any kind of a peace deal. Is that something that the U.S. would ever support?
Well, we have a situation where we haven't had elections in Ukraine, where we have martial law, or essentially martial law in Ukraine, where the leader in Ukraine, I mean, I hate to say it, but he's down at 4% approval rating, and where a country has been blown to smithereens. You got most of the cities are laying.
The context for this question is that Ukraine refused to hold its election last year. It was supposed to hold it in March of last year, and instead they declared martial law, and they're forestalling elections in the country. Democracy is on hold in Ukraine. And you notice that the way the question was phrased, it was like, oh, you're going to interfere in elections if you come up with a deal here. No, they're not even holding elections. Trump has to inform the assembled audience that they haven't held elections in Ukraine as they were supposed to.
Their sides, the buildings are collapsed. It looks like a massive demolition site. The whole, I mean, so many of the cities. I mean, they haven't done it in Kiev because I guess they don't want to shoot too many rockets in there. They've done it.
That's not the AP style guide, by the way, Kiev. You're not allowed to do that.
20%, but they haven't done it 100%. If they wanted to do it 100%, it would probably happen very quickly. But you have cities that are absolutely decimated. And yeah, I would say that, you know, when they want a seat at the table, you could say the people have to, wouldn't the people of Ukraine have to say, like, you know, it's been a long time since we've had an election.
All right, more from the President of the United States coming up. A lot of developments, actually, in an attempt to end that war by the Trump administration today. We'll share that with you all ahead on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 4:35 here at News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, Fairfax County Supervisor Pat Harity will be with us. We've got a rogue prosecutor in Fairfax County who's making life a lot more dangerous for its citizens, and Pat Harity's got some ideas on how to fix that. And you can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. I've got, let's see, I've got an update for you just in the last, let's say, 15 minutes here. Reuters reporting that President Trump has just scored a win in a lawsuit that was designed to challenge Elon Musk's cost-cutting powers, Reuters says. And what they're really, I mean, even right at the headline, yes, Elon Musk is involved in DOGE, but it's not his cost-cutting powers. It's President Trump's cost-cutting powers that are being debated here inside of this courtroom. Donald Trump's administration scored a victory on Tuesday when a judge ruled in its favor in a challenge by a group of state to the authority. This is a huge typo right up front in their piece. Of the Republican president's chief government cost cutter, Elon Musk. Washington-based U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan made the ruling in a lawsuit by Democrat attorneys general from 14 states who argued that Musk, the billionaire Tesla CEO, lacks legal authority to direct the mass firing of federal employees or access sensitive government computer systems. Just think about what they're alleging here. President Trump, as the chief executive, is not allowed to have government employees look through government records? That is really the case that they're making before the court? And also, Elon Musk is not directing the mass firing of anyone. Elon Musk is running an efficiency operation, handing the data off to the relevant agencies, and then the agencies are handling their hiring and firing obligations. The secretaries of each of these cabinets, of each of these cabinet agencies, get to make decisions about who works there and who doesn't. And they're exercising that power. The left is going crazy about this. Reuters reporting the attorneys general argued that their ability to carry out educational and other programs are at risk. They accused Musk's team of unlawfully accessing data at federal agencies and directing a purge of the 2.3 million strong federal workforce. It's a lot more than 2.3. It's closer to 3 million. Reuters not telling the truth there. The lawsuit was filed by more than a dozen states and announced by state attorneys general from New Mexico, Michigan, and Arizona were the ones who announced the lawsuit. Musk spearheads an entity called the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. It has swept through federal agencies, slashing thousands of jobs and dismantling various programs since Trump returned to office last month and put Musk in charge of rooting out wasteful spending as a part of the president's dramatic overhaul of government. The state attorneys general have argued that Musk wields the kind of power that can be exercised only by an officer of the government who has been nominated by the president and confirmed by the U.S. Senate under language in the United States Constitution called the Appointments Clause. The states also have said that DOGE itself has not been authorized by Congress. That's pretty funny. So they want him to be Senate confirmed. Oh, he's got too much power. He has to be Senate confirmed. Oh, interesting. What about Jack Smith? What about these ridiculous special counsels who were coming in to go after President Trump? Why weren't they Senate confirmed? Why weren't they? This is funny. The left all of a sudden is very concerned about this idea that we need Senate confirmed people to do these big jobs. And the only job Elon is doing is one of transparency. It's not one of policy. It's literally exposing waste, fraud, and abuse. The lawsuit seeks to bar DOGE from accessing information systems at the Departments of Labor, Education, Health and Human Services, Energy, Transportation, and Commerce, and at the Office of Personnel Management. Again, the lawsuit doesn't seek to bar DOGE, which is only a piece of the Trump administration. It intends to bar Trump from finding out how the government operates. That's what this is. They also asked Chutkan, who was appointed by Democrat former President Barack Obama, to prevent Musk and his DOGE team members from firing federal employees or putting them on leave. An attorney for the administration told Chutkan on February 14th that he had not been able to confirm mass government layoffs took place. Around 20 lawsuits have been filed in various federal courts challenging Musk's authority, which have led to mixed results. Anyway, the news this afternoon, Judge Chutkan at the moment siding with President Trump and not blocking DOGE from doing the work that the American people expect at all. Let's see. I want to get back to the president's remarks. The president just spoke a few minutes ago here in Maralago, taking a couple of questions. So let's finish out the balance of his Q&A. Here's the president once again at the microphone for the umpteenth time of his very short 47th presidency.
That's not a Russia thing. That's something coming from me and coming from many other countries also. Ukraine is being just wiped out. Look at what's happening to the cities. There are cities, there's not even a building standing. It's a massive, you talk about Gaza. I mean, it's literally, these cities look like Gaza. Actually, many have, percentage-wise, more buildings knocked down.
President Trump has been talking, the media have not, the president has, about the wanton destruction of Ukraine, the unbelievable loss of life there, the destruction of so much history and art and architecture, these buildings that have been brought down that were standing for hundreds of years and are now gone. The president very concerned about all of this and saying this bloodshed, this destruction needs to stop. And the hook today for this aspect of the story is that Marco Rubio, the now Secretary of State, just had a big meeting today with the Russians in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. The Associated Press, which you heard the president just talk about a few minutes ago, they report today that Russia and the United States have agreed today to start working towards ending the war in Ukraine and improving their diplomatic and economic ties. The two countries' top diplomats said after they had talks that reflected what the AP calls an extraordinary about-face in U.S. foreign policy under President Donald Trump. In an interview with the Associated Press, after the meeting, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that the two sides agreed broadly to pursue three goals: to restore staffing at their respective embassies in Washington and Moscow, to create a high-level team to support Ukraine peace talks, and to explore closer relations and economic cooperation. He stressed, however, that the talks, which were attended by his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov, and other senior Russian and U.S. officials, marked the beginning of a conversation, and more work needs to be done. More work needs to be done. Now, you've heard on our news and elsewhere probably that now Zelensky is responding, saying that his trip that he intended to have with Saudi Arabia has now been canceled or postponed after the United States met with Russia one-on-one today. Zelensky tapping the brakes. Well, I wasn't included in this meeting. Yeah, you weren't included in the meeting. You're at war with Russia. You're at war with these people. And the Trump administration is attempting to do whatever it can to provoke a peace. And so Marco Rubio has a meeting with the top foreign minister for Russia today in an attempt to negotiate and navigate to that point. And when they're walking away with an understanding that we are going to restart direct conversations, we will talk to one another. This is not an alien thing in the Trump administration. President Trump is willing to talk to anyone. Is there any leader on planet Earth who he is not willing to speak with? No. He talks to Putin. He's willing to. He talks to Xi Jinping. He's willing to. He meets with Kim Jong-un. Settles that boy down for a little while, didn't he? This is his strategy. Because what Washington does and has been doing for decades is a stinker, a loser. It doesn't work. The status quo is a disaster. Trump is a breaker of status quos. He's getting back to basics. Okay, let me talk to the guy. Let's see what he wants. Let's see how we can get out of this thing. So that's the context today for the president from Maralago talking about all of this. He said, look, we've got to end this thing. Too much bloodshed, too much death, too much destruction. The Ukrainians deserve to have an election at some point to assess who their leadership should actually be, issue their report card for how they think things are going. This is all common sense stuff. This is a presidency of common sense.
Than in Gaza. So, people are tired of it. People want to see something happen. And, the other thing that it's been bothering me for a long time, because I solved the problem with NATO. They paid hundreds of billions of dollars into the funds of NATO when I said you got to pay, because the United States was paying for European countries, and then they take advantage of us on trade. But I've seen it. Look, they have to pay. They have to find out, where's the money going to? We have, I believe President Zelensky said last week that he doesn't know where half of the money is that we gave him. Well, we gave them, I believe, $350 billion, but let's say it's something less than that, but it's a lot. And we have to equalize with Europe, because Europe has given a very much smaller percentage than that. I think Europe has given $100 billion, and we've given, let's say, 300 plus. And it's more important for them than it is for us. We have an ocean in between, and they don't. But where is all the money that's been given? Where is it going? And I've never seen an accounting of it. We give hundreds of billions of dollars. I don't see any accounting. So I want to see peace.
It goes into slush funds right here in this area. That's the answer to that question. Where'd all the money go? I thought it was for Ukraine. No. It went into slush funds in and around the nation's capital. This is what we're trying to fix. Enough of that garbage.
Look, you know why I want? Because I don't want all these people killed anymore. I'm looking at people that are being killed, and they're Russian and Ukrainian people, but they're people. Doesn't matter where they're from on the whole planet. And I think I have the power to end this war. And I think it's going very well. But today I heard, we weren't invited. Well, you've been there for 3 years. You should have ended it 3 years. You should have never started it. You could have made a deal. I could have made a deal for Ukraine that would have given them almost all of the land, everything, almost all of the land, and no people would have been killed, and no city would have been demolished, and not one dome would have been knocked down. But they chose not to do it that way. And President Biden, in all fairness, he doesn't have a clue. He was so bad for this. He was so bad, so pathetic. It's so sad. But with all of that being said, look, it is what it is. When I left, there was no chance that this could have happened. But it happened because we had incompetent leadership at many different levels. But when you see what's taken place in Ukraine with millions of people killed, including the soldiers, millions of people killed, a big percentage of their cities knocked down to the ground. I don't know how anybody even lives there. When they say they took a poll, and Zelensky's at 4%. Who's living there? It's hard to believe that people live there. Their cities are being knocked down, and this is something that would have never happened. And by the way, for 4 years, it didn't happen. It was never going to happen. Go ahead.
One follow-up question. How would you counter the perception, because Russia's pushing for this, obviously, they don't really hold true elections, that would be a capitulation of some sort. How would you guard against potentially Russia installing a puppet government? And then finally, how would that new election have an impact on getting...
So, I'm sorry. So is the argument that Ukraine can never hold elections again in order to protect democracy? Is that the argument? What are you saying? We have to stop Ukraine from holding elections to save democracy? If they hold elections, people might vote for a government that's sympathetic to Russia, and that would be a win for Russia, so therefore democracy needs to stop? What in the world is this argument?
Zelensky to sign the rare earth minerals deal.
Look, you have leadership, and I like him personally. He's fine.
Zelensky?
But I don't care about personally. I care about getting the job done. You have leadership now that's allowed a war to go on that should have never even happened, even without the United States. Look, we had a president who was grossly incompetent. He had no idea what he was doing. He said some very stupid things, like going in for portions and all of the things. He made a lot of bad statements, but he's grossly incompetent, and I think everyone knew that. This is something that should have never happened, would have never happened. And I used to discuss it with Putin. President Putin and I would talk about Ukraine, and it was the apple of his eye, I will tell you that. But there was never a chance of him going in. And I told him, you better not go in, don't go in, don't go in. And he understood that. He understood it fully. But I'm only interested, I want to see if I can save maybe millions of lives. This could even end up in a World War III. I mean, to be honest with you, you've been hearing now Europe is saying, well, I think we're going to go in and we're going to go. All of a sudden, you're going to end up in World War III over something that should have never happened. And, you know, it's a very sad situation. Yeah, please.
In a court filing, the White House said that Elon Musk is not a DOGE employee and has no authority to make decisions. Can you clarify for us today
well, Elon Musk,
what his exact role is there?
Yeah. Elon is, to me, a patriot. So, you know, you could call him an employee, you could call him a consultant, you could call him whatever you want. But he's a patriot. I mean, look at the kind of things I just said. Just write it down, just in case that question got asked, right? And which I'm surprised it took so long.
It's such a stupid question. It's built. The whole point of this narrative construction you're watching is that, oh, there's something nefarious going on. Oh, Elon is self-dealing. Oh, this is bad for the United States. Everything reeks of this stench of, oh, this is a really awful thing that's going on. What's the awful thing? What is it? Because all it sounds like is you are, you know, who's the guy who pulled the fire alarm? They're Jamal Bowmaning the whole, you know, Elon Musk saga, the DOGE thing. They don't have an answer. They don't want to show up for the vote. They don't want to be a part of governance. So they rush to the fire alarm and they smash it and then they run. This is the Jamal Bowman strategy for dealing with DOGE. Pull the fire alarm and run. That's the way the media is handling this. And so even the stupidity of the question today, what is his exact role? Is he officially an employee or a consultant? And how much power does he actually have? Why'd you give Elon Musk all this power? These are very stupid, pointless, useless, not at all productive questions. The answers are exceedingly obvious. I had a listener remind me. I have so many great examples that listeners give me. A listener remind me, you know, this whole thing like, nobody elected Elon Musk. Nobody elected Anthony Fauci. Nobody elected Fauci. Nobody. He was a government employee. He was hired, kept too long, and caused too much damage. But it was the right of the executive branch to hire that dumb guy. It was. And Trump hired a smart guy, Elon Musk, who's doing good work right now. And the left hates it. So they're trying to scandalize it. All right, ahead, we've got President Trump's remarks from Mar-a-Lago. More of that press conference and your calls, 888-630-9625. Hold on.